Today's topic is one that affects everybody, and it's affected a lot of us, especially in the last few years. It is all about trauma. So, Akanksha, as always, please kick us off by telling us what is trauma.
So, to understand a complex topic like trauma, I want to begin with a story. Once upon a time, there was a young girl called Maya who had experienced something traumatic in her childhood. Although she wanted to move on from it, the memory lived inside her body and it felt like a tangled ball of yarn. Initially, she tried to ignore it, but over time, the ball of yarn felt tighter and tighter, and it caused her pain and discomfort. One day, Maya met a wise old woman in the woods who could sense her internal turmoil. The old woman explained that trauma can get stored in the body like a physical memory, and it needs to be untangled to be released. Together, they sat and began to unravel the knots in the yarn, bit by bit, until the ball became a straight and smooth strand. As they did, Maya noticed that the pain and discomfort that she had felt for so long began to disappear. She felt lighter and more free, and like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. The old woman explained that just like the yarn, trauma can be unwound and released from the body. It requires patience and care and sometimes the help of a trusted guide. Although the memory will never fully disappear, its hold on us becomes looser, and this gives us space to breathe and to grow. So thanks to this guidance, Maya was able to move forward with a newfound sense of clarity and peace, and the memory of the trauma no longer felt like a tangled mess, but instead it became a part of her story that she could carry with her with compassion and understanding. So trauma is often spoken about in terms of severe and extreme levels of stressful events such as natural disasters or acts of violence or accidents. However, going through an event that is very stressful or dangerous or distressing or frightening, that it overwhelms our system and causes damage to our physical, emotional, and mental well-being over a long period of time is known as trauma. It can take many forms like physical abuse, sexual assault, child neglect and maltreatment, domestic violence, emotional and psychological abuse, acts of bullying and violence in schools, medical trauma, or war-related trauma, amongst others. It becomes acute when we are exposed to a single stressful or dangerous event, and chronic when we are exposed to repeated and prolonged stressful events like bullying and domestic violence. Complex trauma results from repeated exposure to traumatic events.
That story about Maya was so beautiful, Akanksha. It's so profound, and such a simple way of explaining such a complex phenomena, like you said. But trauma could also show up at the workplace, right? Especially with we see accounts, recently there have been so many tech layoffs, and so many people getting laid off on a moment's notice. So that's bound to cause some effects, some trauma for sure.
Absolutely. And instances of bullying and psychological and emotional abuse at work as well can be
Yeah.
classified as traumatic events.
Yeah, so if you're one of those people who's been affected by the recent layoffs, so you would know somebody who has, please share this with them. Maybe they'll find it helpful. Right now, everybody, they could be in survival mode, trying to find their next job, their security, and that's completely fine. That's a completely natural reaction. But after that, we hope that you deal with trauma that you and everything you've been through in a healthy way, so it doesn't show up later in your life. So speaking of that, how does trauma show up in our day-to-day life as well as our body?
So when we experience trauma, our nervous system goes into overdrive and triggers responses that are fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses. These are primitive survival instincts that help us respond to threat. A fight response is characterized by aggression and a need to confront the threat. Flight response is characterized by a need to run away or flee from the threat. Freeze response is characterized by paralysis and an inability to act. And the fawn response is characterized by attempts to appease or support the threat. These are all normal and natural responses, but when they are triggered repeatedly over a long period of time, they can become maladaptive and have lasting impacts on us. Trauma is often stored in the body and it manifests in physical symptoms like chronic pain, digestive issues, sleep disturbances, headaches, and respiratory problems. But our bodies are very resilient and it's possible to release trauma. We just need the right tools to do so.
Yeah. So with that, let's jump into the right tools. What are some of the tools that you ask your clients to do when they follow when they are dealing with trauma?
So there are various tools and techniques that you can use. First and foremost is therapy. Picture a weed growing in your garden. If you only cut off the visible parts of the weed, the roots will continue to spread and grow and cause further damage. To truly get rid of the weed, we must dig deep and eliminate it at its root. Similarly, in order to heal from trauma, we must understand the root cause of it. And this can be buried in our past experiences and emotional wounds. So talking to a therapist can be extremely helpful, and there are various types of therapies available, but it's important to choose one that resonates with you. Then it's important to show self-compassion. Think of a child who has fallen off their bike and scraped their knee. Even if it is the child's fault, your natural response is to support and reassure the child instead of blame and criticize them. Similarly, it's important that we show ourselves the same compassion and understanding when we face these situations, just like we would for a loved one. This helps us to create a sense of safety and acceptance in our healing process. Then we have physical exercise. This is like the hammer that chips away at the walls that we have built around traumatic memories. It helps us to process them and move on from our past experiences. It's a great way to release tension and stress from the body and produce endorphins. And it helps us to feel more empowered and more in control of our life. Then we have creative expressions. Imagine that a house has a cracked foundation. No matter how many repairs you do or how much paint you slap on it, You will continue to experience problems until you address the structural issues that the house has. Similarly, negative beliefs about ourselves and about the world can lay a foundation for trauma, and these affect our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. It's important to it's important to recognize and transform these beliefs so that we can make a more solid foundation for our healing. So, creative expressions like drawing, painting, journaling, playing a piece of music all help us to uncover, express, and process our trauma. And moreover, creative expression helps us to tap into emotions and experiences that are sometimes difficult to put into words, which is often the case with trauma. And then we have social support. Imagine a large, sturdy tree in a forest. In spite of severe weather conditions and strong winds, the tree is able to remain standing because its roots are firmly anchored in the ground and it's getting support from the surrounding trees. So similarly, it's important to build strong connections with supportive people who help us to weather the storms of life and be resilient in the face of trauma. Connecting with others who have gone through similar experiences can be empowering and it can be extremely validating. So, support groups and online communities are a good place to connect with people who are able to relate to you. And lastly, we have mindfulness meditation. Imagine that you are walking along a riverbank and you see a jagged piece of rock. Without mindfulness, you might trip and stumble on it and hurt yourself. But when we are aware of our surroundings, we are able to notice it and walk around it and move on in our path. Similarly, practicing mindfulness can help us to recognize and navigate strong emotions and sensations that help us stay present in the moment and move on in our journey, in our healing journey.
Yeah. Mindfulness and meditation actually are a great place to start because when you're sitting with your emotions after a long time, or that's when you truly give them the space and time to show up. So I'll give you an example. I do have some clients who are trying meditation for the first time, or they're beginners, and they're like, Kanchi, I have such a hard time just sitting still because I get agitated, I get irritated, I start to feel angry. And I say that's a good thing. And that is because you finally have shut out the rest of the world and you've sat with you're sitting with yourself, with your emotions, with your feelings, with your past wounds. And finally, your body saying, hey, do you hear me now? Now is the time to start this journey of connecting with yourself and slowly healing whatever is bothering you. And a lot of times it does come from past trauma. So if that is something that you're listening to and you feel that, hey, when you start to meditate and you get agitated or angry, don't run away from it. In fact, lean into it, explore it, figure out the cause, and that's how your healing journey actually starts. Another thing that really helps is nutrition, good food. And yeah, we know food plays a big role in in how we live, and nutrition dense food really helps with your healing journey as well. We are not nutritionists, so we can't give you advice on that, but do your research and really use that to supplement your healing journey as well. Another thing that really helps is energy healing. That could be pranic healing, it could be Reiki, or any other energy modality. Because what is energy at the end of the day? It is our thoughts, emotions, wounds, and our feelings that that are that could be from the past, it could be even from the future, it could be how you feel about yourself right now in the present moment. And when you're going through an energy healing session, you and the person doing it with you basically gets you into this calm state where you are ready to face those emotions and feelings, and then sort of disconnect them or take them out of your body. But one thing to do, I do want to say, is that if this is something you want to explore, please go to a certified professional, because if you're not equipped to handle the after effects of an energy healing session, they can be quite traumatic in themselves as well. So just be careful. And with that, I would like to say that any sort of healing is hard, but it can be difficult. It can feel daunting, but with the right guidance, you can do it. And it might be hard, but at the other end of it is peace. And with peace comes our best life, our most fulfilled life, which is what we want, and which is what we want for you. So with that, what is it that, any tools or techniques that you've used to manage trauma in your life, big or small? Do share with us. Do reach out if you have any questions or if you need some support in your healing journey. If not, we will see you next time. Have a wonderful week. Bye.
Bye.